We were extremely fond of Wing Commander Wallace, who is our member 007, and deeply honoured to be doing this. As I say, you'll be hearing from some people in about 15 minutes' time, and apologies again about the queues everywhere, but we thought 500. We've got about 2,000. It doesn't work. Anyway, do enjoy the day. Please don't knock over the aircraft in the middle either. It's irreplaceable. Thank you.
Ken Wallace had a long and fruitful life that benefited individuals, nations and mankind. His granddaughter set in motion this memorial fly-in at Old Buckingham Airfield, 2013. A cradle of family, friends and admirers are here to say a final farewell to this much respected aviator, inventor and leader of men. The regional TV crew and local journalists are ready to capture this historic event. Ken's persona reached across generations. Arrangements have been made for individuals who felt the need to leave a personal message for Ken Wallace's family. When working for his father, who owned a motorcycle business in King's Lynn, his love of engineering was brought to life. He built his first motorcycle in 1927, this being at the early stage of motorcycle development, long before any of these machines were made.
I recall a lovely occasion when my wife and I drove him down to Old Warden to an Aeronautical Society function. And as we set off, my wife asked him a question.
On the back seat and so forth. I don't know what, I have a suspicion that slightly stood for a German SAS operation or something.
An hour and a half later, he'd gone through his complete presentation, and for good measure, on the way back, we had another go at it.
Anyway, as a result of that and some flying at the Lake Constance battle area, and
Ken was a very strong supporter of the RAFA and Veterans Associations, and Flixton Museum in particular was a great love of his, and those of you who've been there will understand why it's such a lovely place. He was a truly remarkable man. Thank you.
You all know about his motorbikes. He built at 11, how he filled his eyesight to get in the RAF, his Lysander and Wellington exploits. His guns, cameras, boats, special cars, scale-electric.
well, I had to kill the 234 and so on, and I saved some of the bits. And the bomb sight and navigation system had this lovely electric motor, then there are gear wheels. And then it was a challenge. I thought, well, that's still a bit big. They're both the same caliber, .085 inch caliber. I thought it was time to make a really small pistol. That's that little one. And believe it or not, they really work. But that little pistol, I'll just take it out of the box so it gives an idea of the scale of it. That pistol fires through and just makes a hump. There's just a bump there where the rounds are stopped, but they go through that much wood. So I decided I was going to make it a very tiny camera, but this takes 16mm film, and the actual size of the format is much bigger. It's actually bigger than a normal 16mm film. It doesn't need the perforations in it, and in fact you can cut down 35mm film without perforations and use them in it. It's a focal plane shutter. It takes over 100 pictures in one loading. These pictures I took with the camera. That is a fellow in the office. That is Ely Cathedral from the air, from a chipmunk, and close-ups of coins, and flying in a Lincoln bomber. There's the Lincoln, and that's the next door church.
There's no ending. But here was a truly free spirit. He suffered, bureaucracy with much disdain.
And we used to have grannies here who had ponies, and very often the grannies said, I've never been up in an aeroplane, I'd love to go for a ride with you. And I'd say, well, if you sign this form of indemnity, yes, I'm being given the ride at my own request at no charge and accept responsibility. And their friends would witness it. Yeah. Believe it or not now, under European law, that is no longer a fair contract.
Well, I've done some pretty stupid things in my flying career. This was one of the most frightening flights of my life. Having mounted this thing like a horse, we shot up in the air with much thrashing from the infernal McCulloch screaming, thankfully, behind. No visible means of support, zooming through the Reymerston trees, sitting on a broomstick. It really was an unnatural experience for a fixed-wing pilot.
Ken lived in a beautiful Georgian home, Reymerston Hall, in a small village in Norfolk called Reymerston. In honour of Ken, they have immortalised him on the new village sign.
It's inspiring that a man of his age and ability can still put us to shame, really.
Ken's looks were part of his makeup. Thoughtful, a listener, reflective, and intensive focus before he decided to speak, with a keen sense of fun.
It falls to earth like a sycamore. Sycamore flies down. Exactly what happens with the autogar, so he said. I wouldn't like to be there when the engine does stop.
I learned a great deal of wisdom. I felt he instilled wisdom about planning, about flying. And I think, simple things but hard to grasp. If in doubt, don't.
The real star of this film was Ken Wallace's gyrocopter flying sequences.
I did all the flying, 85 flights, 46 hours in the air, over the volcanoes in Japan, and we were 6,000 feet up. But of course, Sean Connery has been seen to sit in the seat wearing an open-neck sleeveless shirt outside his trousers. So although it was 6,000 feet, 6 o'clock in the morning, I was still having to fly in an open-neck sleeveless shirt. So it was quite cold.
For the locals in East Anglia, he is the real James Bond. Ken had a 2-year secondment to the American Air Force. During this period, he piloted the B-36, navigating the world at 10 miles high, carrying the atom bomb, ready to be used should it ever be needed during the Cold War period. Modern autogyros owe a lot to the pioneering engineering work undertaken by Ken. Today you sit in comfort, side by side, in a cockpit, not astride a broomstick as previously described. His hangar contains many autogyros developed for special purposes, along with other fascinating developments like early aerial photography cameras.
Sure, I'm a strong believer in apprenticeship rather than degrees in engineering. And if you had a degree in engineering, you came in as a flying officer, not a pilot officer or the lowest form of animal life. They came in as a flying officer. But one or two of them were useless because they were all theory and no practice. But one of them came along and he said, I can see the practical side. I've got to learn to tighten a nut on a bolt. And his name was Mac Taggart. He went on to become an Air Vice Marshal.
Oh,
yeah.
you see.
Here.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And that's the spin-up lever there that engages, and the wheel brakes. And that's the brake for the rotors.
At the time of his death, he held 8 world auto gyro records. At one stage, he held over 38.
When you take hands and feet off, you can adjust it for how you want it to fly.
Oh, can you?
Yeah. So if you've got both legs over one side, you obviously need to adjust it because of the weight.
You have to think quite quickly though, don't you?
Well, it behaves itself so well. Yeah, this is a cylinder from a Hercules. There are 14 of them. And this is the sleeve. That sleeve fits up inside that cylinder, you see. Yeah. But the sleeve is driven by a ball fitting here with another half, holding the ball there. And there's a shaft that goes around. Yeah. So the movement of the sleeve is...
Oh.
Now,
Wow,
and this is no small piston.
No.
And that fits in there. But in the top of the cylinder is what they call a junk head, which is like a fixed piston with piston rings on it extending down into the cylinder, you see. And that's where the 2 spark plugs go. But at the time of firing, the cylinder is at the top and it's sealed off, you see, by the junk head. So there are no valves or anything. Power stroke takes place. By the time the piston got to the bottom, the sleeve has moved down and 2 of these line up with the 2 exhaust ports. The piston comes to the top, by which time the sleeve has turned and sealed off the 2 ports and opened up 3 inlet ports. Look at that engineering.
Very.
When you think 14 cylinders being made and women in a factory making everything. So the piston goes down again, draws the mixture in. By the time it's gone to the bottom, the sleeve has come up again, ready for compression stroke and power stroke. That was the way all big piston engines were being made by Rolls-Royce and by Napier as well.
And I'd finally like to ask Mel, Ken's granddaughter, to come up and say a few words.
Thank you. I wasn't actually expecting to do this, so I'm not prepared, so forgive me if I fluff it. Really, it's just to say thank you to everybody for making today possible. It was a bit like Challenge Annika. I gave Matt a call a few weeks ago and said, I've got an idea, can we do something for Grandpa? He said, yeah, of course we can. We've got a date, 29th of September. And then it went into absolute overload. So thank you, Matt, so much. Old Buckingham Airfield, Jeff, everybody, you've been absolutely brilliant putting this all together. Jerry, Henry, Julian, amazing tributes to Grandpa, and I think he would have sort of sat there sort of nodding away thinking, well, he's a very modest man, but it was brilliant. And also thank you to everybody for bringing their aircraft, amazing array of aircraft, autogyros, helicopters, planes. I'm not aeronautical, I couldn't tell you exactly what they are. Cars and vehicles and bikes and boats and really random mixture of things that actually were totally irrelevant to Grandpa. And he would have loved to have flown in today. It's perfect flying weather for an autogyro. Sunny, warm, really windy. He would have shown off big time if he'd been here today. And he's here in spirit. And thank you all for coming today. It's meant a lot to us, the family. And we're very proud of him. We miss him dearly. And I'm sure we all will. So we must never forget the likes of Ken Wallace. Thank you very much.